Hi, I'm Matt, or as most people know me now, one.tough.nut.matt. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer at 34, and this is my story. So, a little bit about me before I got diagnosed and became known as one.tough.nut.matt. So, I was 34, living a great life, and like most guys, thought I was invincible. Nothing could stop me. Uh, Young people don't get sick, right? Or nothing that you can't recover from pretty easily. Living in lovely Australia, sunny days, enjoying my days down the beach. I live pretty close to it. I'm no more than a 5-minute walk for a swim, and it was just something I like doing. But unfortunately, things started to take a turn back in early 2024. So I'm always been pretty active, going on my bike and doing other things, but I started to notice that I was putting on a little bit of weight, and just started with a bit of a belly. I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm just getting too comfortable. So I started to go on a bit of a fitness journey, and I did take a little bit of a shortcut and started on Ozempic. So things were going pretty well. Started to shed quite a lot of weight. Noticeably looking slimmer, but I did still seem to have a bit of a gut going on, right? Which was a little surprising to me, but I thought it was just a byproduct of being on Ozempic. Now, for me, it was around that period in January 2024 that I started getting my first signs that something was wrong. I started having heart palpitations, dizziness, fatigue, night sweats, all things that weren't very common to me. Didn't think much of it. I just assumed it was something to do with my heart. Now, this is where things started to, I guess, get a little bit more serious. From that period on in January, I started getting really bad lower left back pain, very specific. So I was doing what most people do, Googling, TikToking, seeing what videos are out there of other people with these symptoms. And most seemed to say it was sciatica pain. I thought, okay, that's what I got. I started seeing physios, started doing more stretching, but things got worse each month that went by, right? And look, it was getting pretty serious where I started taking pain meds every 4 hours to try and deal with the pain. I couldn't sit still. I was often lying down. I started buying new mattresses because I thought, oh, maybe it's my mattress that's causing all this back pain. And then I started buying new shoes because maybe it was the shoes. And I just went through a series of different sort of thought processes as to what was going on and why I had such bad back pain. About 4 months in, things started to get even more serious. I needed to sleep with pain meds. I needed to have hot water bottles. I would have 40-minute showers to try and relieve the back pain. Heat was the only thing that seemed to help. And I thought, well, must be that I have a slip disc. So I actually went and saw a friend of mine who is a chiropractor. And I said to him, look, it's been now 6 months that I've had this back pain. My doctor suggested some scans. I'd previously put them off. What do you think? He had a look at me and said, look, yeah, something doesn't seem right. I'd encourage you to go do those scans. So he pulled out my phone and put in a couple of scans for me. He said, go do a scan on your hip, on your back. If things start to deteriorate a little bit more this week. So anyway, a week goes by. I get to about Wednesday and I'm getting ready for work. And when I was getting out of bed, I was like, oh, I can't move my leg. And I thought, this isn't good. As I got out of bed, I fell. I thought, okay, surely I didn't just sleep on my leg. That's why it's gone numb or something like that. It was at that moment I thought, hey, I better get this scan done. So I booked in for a CT scan on my back. Now, didn't think much of it. I was hesitant to do this scan because I thought they were going to turn around and say to me, oh, you've got a slip disc. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do back surgery. I'm too young for that. So I went in for this CT scan and laying on the table, I go in for the first pass in the machine. And then the technician comes out. And for me, I'll never forget this moment. It definitely haunts me and still scars me to this day every time I think about it. But the technician looked at me and goes to me, so how long have you had this back pain for? I said, oh, about 6 months. He goes to me, I think we found the reason why. And it's like he'd just seen a ghost. I I was just looking through his eyes, and my whole life flashed before my own. And it was at that moment I knew something wasn't right. I could just tell. He said, "Look, we're trying to get a hold of your doctor. They're not answering. I'm going to recommend that we do some additional scans right now." And I said, "Okay, you do whatever you need to do." So they hooked me up for my first cannula. Hadn't had one of those in a long time. Was injected with the dye, and we did another CT scan with contrast. Now you get up from that scan. They don't tell you anything, but I knew something was wrong. So as soon as I get out of there, I race home and I call up my general doctor and I say, "Hey, what's going on? My scan place tried to contact you. Something's not right." It's like, "No one's contacted me." And I'm like, "Okay, well maybe it wasn't as bad as they thought. False alarm." Well, I was packing up to go away on a bit of a trip, and as I was about to leave the door, my phone rings and I look at the number and it's my doctor. Straight away, my heart sunk. I knew I knew there was something seriously wrong at that point. I answered. The doctor goes to me, "Yeah, look, the scans have come back and they have found a mass." I said, "Okay." They said, "Yeah, it's a sarcoma. It's about 13 centimeters by 2 centimeters." And I said, "Okay, is that big?" And she said, "Well, it's very long, but very narrow, and it's in your psoas muscle." I didn't even know what a psoas muscle was at that point. She said, "They've recommended you urgently go to a sarcoma clinic in Sydney to speak to a surgeon immediately." Okay, it's pretty serious. And I said, "So what is it? What's a sarcoma?" She goes, "It's cancer." I'm like, "Okay." So from there, that very next day, we went straight up to see a surgeon who specialized in sarcomas. And for those that don't know, they're a really rare type of muscle cancer. All things I came to find out. I sat down for that appointment, and the surgeon said to me, "Look, it's pretty serious. Sarcomas are very dangerous. They're aggressive, fast growing cancers and extremely rare. We think you have a liposarcoma. It's growing in your psoas muscle and it's wrapped around your femoral nerve, along with your intestines, kidney, and other items." Okay. I said, "What does that mean? I do chemo." And he said to me, "Chemo's off the table. It's not an option for the type of cancer we think you have." I said, "Okay, what does this mean?" He said, "We need to operate immediately. We need to go in there, remove the mass." I said, "Well, it's not very big, I heard. It's only a couple of centimeters." He said, "Oh, no, no, that was actually a typo. The mass is quite large. It's about the size of a football at this point." I went, "Wow, okay. Explains why I have a big belly." He said, "The surgery is very complex. It is the most complex type of surgery we can do. It involves so many of your organs. Um, and it will likely mean that we will take your femoral nerve, which controls your left leg." What does that mean? Can I walk again? We should be able to get you walking. You'll just walk differently, and you'll have to relearn how to walk without the control of your left leg. You won't be able to bend it anymore. And that's when it really hit me. That's when I knew my life was going to change forever. I walked out of that consultation and I collapsed on the floor. It was probably the hardest moment of my life. And it still haunts me to this day. From there, if we fast forward a little bit, I went through a number of different tests and procedures to get me ready for that operation. I went through a procedure where I was awake and they went in through my back and they took a biopsy of the tumor to find out exactly what it was. I remember laying on that table while I went through a CT machine while they did this operation to do it while I was awake. And the pain was immense. And I just started singing Miley Cyrus, Party in the USA. I don't know why I started singing it, but I just did it to distract myself. I can only imagine what the other doctors, surgeons, and so forth were thinking in the room as I sung out Miley Cyrus. Ironically, I probably should have sung Wrecking Ball, given where things ended up going. So 3 days before this life-changing surgery, where I'd be cut open and have my kidney, intestines, femoral nerve, a whole heap of other things removed from my body. Most importantly, my ability to walk normally. I had my final consult with the surgeon, and I said to him, "Look, just please let me walk when I come out of this surgery." And he said to me, "Look, we're going to give you the best chance at life." At this point, I didn't realize how dire it was. Sarcomas are likely to come back within that first 2 years, 50% of the time, is what he told me. It was very likely that the sarcoma would kill me. It was just a matter of when. He said, "I'm going to do everything I can." He said, "In regards to your ability to walk, I will pray for you at church on the weekend." And ironically, that's when I knew I was in some trouble if the surgeon is going to be praying for me too. Now, on that drive home, I stopped in for a KFC, a last final supper, as I called it. Uh, I was going to go on a 3-day cleanse so I could undergo the operation, and there was going to be some complications with my intestines. And I was just about to sit down and eat, and I got a call from my surgeon. And he goes to me, "Matt, it is great news." I said, "Okay." He said, "Your biopsy results just came back. We've been holding out on those. Remember how I explained to you that there's a very small chance it could be something else? It was so small, it was a 1% that we didn't even really go into detail because I didn't want to give you false hope. But it turns out you are the 1%. Not only did we think you were diagnosed with a really rare cancer, we now think you're 1% of the 1%. You have testicular cancer, which has spread. The surgery is off. You will go immediately into chemotherapy. You have a really good chance of beating this thing now." And he goes to me, "You've got embryonic carcinoma." I was like, "What?" I don't even know what that means. But he went on to explain it's a type of aggressive, rare testicular cancer, but one that is treatable. So we literally celebrated. I don't know how many guys would celebrate being diagnosed with testicular cancer, but it was really a miracle. It was a life-changing event. It gave me hope and it gave me a future. So immediately we went straight into chemotherapy. I'll skip most of those details, but I went through 4 cycles of what they call BEP chemo, which is the main type of chemo for testicular cancer. It's bleomycin, etoposide, and cisplatin. I did 4 cycles of that, which is what they do to those that have the most aggressive type of testicular cancer. There was no orodectomy, which is the removal of the testy. We ultimately found a very small baby-sized 1 centimeter tumor on my left testy, and that was the primary source of my cancer. It sent it up into my body, into my lymph nodes, and that is ultimately how I ended up growing this football-sized tumor. That was growing and growing until the chemotherapy started, and it was finally at that point that it started to shrink. So the aim of the chemo was to shrink it up to hopefully save a lot of my organs and retain the ability to walk. The plan was to go through that, then go through an orodectomy, along with a very complex, what they call a retroperineal lymph node dissection. So essentially, they cut me open from my ribs down to my groin. They went in there and removed the lymph nodes that connect my groin. They removed this mass that was growing in my psoas muscle and removed part of my psoas muscle. They found some masses in my liver, so I had a liver resection. Because of the way the tumor was growing, it damaged the tubes that supply my kidney, so I had some reconstruction done with some stents put in. And obviously the orodectomy and then a hernia operation because of the damage. It was, as they called it, one of the most complex surgeries they can do. I had multiple surgeons, and it was a 9-hour procedure, and probably one of the hardest events of my life. So, touching on that, waking up from this massive surgery, I genuinely went in there thinking that I wouldn't wake up. I'd recorded videos to all my family and friends to say goodbye. I wrote my will. I do all the things you do when you prepare to leave this world. And as part of that, when I went in and ultimately did wake up from it, I was surprised to be here again, but very blessed. I woke up in the ICU. I had tubes down my throat, through my nose. I had cannulas and things connected to my throat, into my main jugular vein. I had cannulas in my arms. I had an incision all the way down. I had, I think, close to 100 staples holding together my body. Uh, I was in extreme pain. I had a nerve block done when I went in for this procedure, essentially almost like an epidural that ladies get during pregnancy and birthing. So that helped a bit, but I had a machine hooked up, continually pumping in pain meds to get me through the severe pain that I was experiencing. I could barely breathe. One of the complications of the type of chemo that I got, bleomycin, is that it causes lung damage, and they severely restricted the amount of oxygen that I received because it could actually lead to, I believe, an aneurysm in my lungs, which would kill me. So I was already struggling to breathe and wasn't allowed to have too much oxygen. I was in an ICU, and yeah, I was struggling. Uh, it was a very hard period. I spent the next 4 days where it both physically and mentally broke me. Struggled to breathe, couldn't sleep. I was heavily medicated. But eventually we did get out of there, and I made it to a general ward where I spent around 7 or 8 days off memory, and got discharged on Christmas Eve, a bit of a Christmas miracle. So I was very thankful for that and the work that the surgeons, doctors, nurses did to get me through that period. Now, I went home, I was discharged and spent Christmas Day with my family. And then on the next day, unfortunately, I ended up in emergency. My stomach went into paralysis. I wasn't able to eat for the first 4 or 5 days when I was in hospital. I was only on water. After that, they started introducing food. The biggest complication from my surgery is your stomach does go in paralysis, and you do get a blockage in your intestines. Now, I ended up in the emergency room, but luckily, the doctors in the hospital were able to contact my surgeon. He was able to give instructions to avoid another surgery, to go in there to remove the blockage. And he was able to pass on the message that the results from the pathology had come back from the surgery, and it was very good news. So subsequently in the new year, I was able to sit down with my oncologist, and it had been, by this point, about 9 months now, 10 months since I was diagnosed, and he was able to tell me that I was in remission. The the pathology results came back, and it showed no cancer. There was no teratoma, which doesn't respond to chemotherapy, but I was very lucky. The chemo had worked and done its job. So yeah, it was a fantastic result to be put into that category. I did have some more surgeries after that, but not as eventful. And I've spent that next sort of year getting to this period now, which we're in 2026. I hit 2 years since I was diagnosed on the 4th of July, 2024, Independence Day for the Americans out there, since I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And I do believe it was a blessing that I did get testicular cancer. Maybe I'm just more grateful given how bad things were when I started. Survival rates of 40%, and then testicular cancer is very treatable. Ironically, not so much if caught late, like in my case, but I've still had a really great outcome and should experience many happy years being cancer-free now. Something that not all cancer diagnoses get the privilege of. So I'm very conscious of that. So that leads me to now. It got to about a year ago, and I was well in my recovery. Hair's grown back. I lost all of that during chemotherapy. And I realized, how do I give back? Like, I've just survived the unthinkable. I've produced a Hail Mary. How do I thank the world for all the support it's given me? I spent a long period on TikTok, sitting in cancer ward, sitting in my bed, scrolling videos, just keeping me going. I thought, hold on a second. I saw a lot of videos about women going through cancer, Unfortunately, women deal with a lot of cancer in their life in regards to breast cancer and so forth. There was very little guys talking about testicular cancer or cancer in general. So I thought, I'm not going to hide away from the world. I'm going to start telling my story. I'm going to get the message out there that testicular cancer is the most common cancer for young guys. That's something I had no idea about. I had no idea I should be checking my balls for lumps, swelling, pain, changes in size. Although in my case, I had none of those symptoms. I just had that lower back pain. I came to find out that testicular cancer's symptoms, one of them is lower back pain, but I had no idea. I let it go on for over 6 months before I got help, and who knows how long it was growing before that. They think it could have been multiple years that I had this tumor growing inside of me because of its size. The recovery's been hard. I've had scan anxiety, the recovery, both physically and mentally. I've lost the feeling in my hands and feet from the chemotherapy. I have quite a bit of pain in my left leg from losing my psoas muscle. I have no feeling in my thigh. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I've had to have a second chance at life. I realized that surviving cancer wasn't the finish line. I had to figure out how to actually live afterwards. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm out there now on TikTok, telling my story, sharing those symptoms and signs, and putting a bit of a laugh around the whole thing, right? I could sit there and cry about it, or I can make fun of testicular cancer. And that's what I'm doing. I found that it definitely resonates with guys, right? Making a bit of fun of it gets them interested and gets them talking about the topic. I started putting videos out there, getting a couple hundred views, to most recently in the past week, nearly hitting 6 million views on my latest video. I have nearly 17,500 followers now. I do TikTok lives where I go on there and I answer questions around testicular cancer. Some of those lives I'm having between 5,000 to 10,000 people come through during an hour or two. So it's intense, but I'm getting the word out there, one person and follower at a time. And I see it genuinely as a way that I can give back. I wake up to messages in my inbox. Over the course of a week, I'll have 3 to 4 guys reaching out to me saying they've just been diagnosed and they have some questions. So I love that I can be that guy that answers those questions and let them know that there is hope after all of this. Unfortunately, 1 in 10 guys won't survive it, but they are good odds, and catching it early is really important. So, what's my message to all of you watching at home today, listening to my story? Testicular cancer is the most common cancer for young men. So if you are a guy, you know a guy, pass on this message. Don't ignore the changes. Don't be embarrassed. Don't assume you're too young. Something doesn't feel right, get it checked. Lumps, swelling, pain, changes in size, lower back pain are all symptoms of testicular cancer. I never thought I'd be the guy telling thousands of men to check their balls. But if sharing the worst 2 years of my life means that one guy catches his cancer early, then I'll keep talking about it. Cancer changed my life. It took a lot from me, but it also gave me a completely different perspective on what life is worth. I'm still dealing with the consequences of it. I'm still recovering, but I'm here. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Don't wait until something is seriously wrong before you listen to your body. I'm Matt, one.tough.nut.matt, and that's my story.